You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Shout, shout, let it all out. Shoe sustainability I can't live without. Come on, recycle your shoes. Come on, Matt Priest and Andy Polk. On the Shoe and Show you listen the most. Come on, we're talking to you. Come on.
That's fearful and fearful after that.
It's a little throwback song to kick off the show. Today we're talking about shoe sustainability. This has been a huge theme, I think, for the past year for a lot of folks. One of the biggest challenges, Matt, that we continually see and talk about is a lack of a firm definition that can kind of, get everybody on the same page, market appropriately without misleading your consumers on sustainability.
That makes
issues.
me think of a Kool Moe Dee song, Wild Wild West.
Oh, snap.
Wild Wild West.
Yes.
Because it is the Wild West when it comes to sustainability. You define it, it's yours.
Or you could also say, welcome to the jungle. What's your definition of sustainability? You say it's recycled materials, but that ain't that for me in the jungle. Welcome to the jungle. Sustainability.
My serpentine.
Yeah, exactly. All right. That's enough of the songs.
I'm trying to think of another one, but we should just kill it.
Yeah, let's not go into that rabbit hole. All right. So I'm proud to announce we've been working for the last several months to set up a resource center and an education center for the industry. There's some companies out there who are really on top of this and have been working on sustainability for a long, long time. There are many more companies who are trying to figure out how they set up sustainability programs and work with factories and material suppliers on sustainability issues. So we set up a website. It's shoesustainability.com. Shoesustainability.com. Shoesustainability.com.
3 times the charm.
3 times the charm. Now it's stuck in everyone's head. Wonderful.
Weakest sound ever.
I didn't. But basically, we built this site basically because we actually did a survey of the industry, and we found that a large portion of our industry has no real programs on sustainability. Many can't define what sustainability is. And from a survey that we did recently, which is on Shoe Sustainability website, you can go on there. It benchmarks our industry. No one has yet done a survey of footwear brands to see where they are at on this. And it was anonymous. So it's very accurate in terms of people really speaking the truth from their perspective. And one of the points, the key takeaways that we had was talking the talk versus walking the walk. So we asked companies about we asked them to weigh the conversations of sustainability in their companies, right? So one was like not very intense, obviously almost non-existent, and then on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 would be like they're talking about it like every single hour of every single day. And so the intensity scale of it was 7 out of 10, which is pretty intense. It means
is intense.
You're talking about it pretty often in conversations on product issues, right?
Right.
To balance that, though, the walk was really interesting because only 1 in 3 companies has a real sustainability program in place.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of talk about it, but there's only a few companies, 1 in 3, 33%.
Yep.
Actually doing something on sustainability.
Yeah, and I think if we start doing this over time, it was a great survey pulled together, Andy. If you start doing this over time, hopefully you'll see that people continue to talk about it.
Right.
But you get that 1 in 3 up to 2 in 5 or whatever the numbers are, and people are starting to instigate or not instigate, but implement a
Right,
program.
Sure.
So,
and I think that another question that kind of brings that out, we asked several different questions, similar questions, several different ways to try to gauge what the movement toward this is.
Right.
And so one of the questions we asked was who is doing what? And so we asked the professionals for materials development and sourcing to kind of give us insights into where they're at. So one of them was we track, report sustainability measurements, and have a corrective action plan. 29% said that they currently have something like that is a sustainability program in place, and they are tracking things and trying to move forward and get better at it.
right.
But then we asked, okay, we know that not a lot of people are doing it right now, but what about in the future? And so we gave them a 3-year landing pad, and we said, we plan to track and report sustainability measurements in the next 3 years. That went to 42%, which was very encouraging because it looks, obviously it's moving in the right direction.
Yep.
Still maybe not a majority of companies, but certainly in the next 3 years we'll get there. So that was great.
And the question is, what is that? What are they aiming to? What will they track? What will they decide internally to be?
Okay.
What sustainability
Sure.
will be?
And we ask these questions too. It's like what's being tracked and how much, right?
Right.
And it's a key question because you're not just asking surface level, what do you think sustainability is? It's
Right.
actually like tracking these measurements mean that you're actually thinking and focusing and targeting and have goals on these
Right.
things, right? So
Right.
we asked several different things, but there were four key areas that we asked about. We asked who's tracking factory energy and waste, factory energy and or water usage. 32% of the respondents said they are tracking that, and that could just mean they're basically asking the factory, tell us what your waste is, and
Right.
are you up, are you down, like just giving them data points. It doesn't mean that necessarily there's a program in place to reduce that or improve that, but just being thoughtful about it. Factory material and water waste recycling. So that means if the materials are used, what do you do with them? Do you just throw them away? Do you recycle them?
Right.
Same with water waste. When water is done processing through the production process, are you trying to recycle that in some way? 31%. So not bad, but still we're looking at kind of in the same range. We're 1 and 3. Factory emissions and carbon footprint, 27%. Said that they're in some way tracking that and looking at that. And I would think the factory emissions is especially in China because the factories have to track that already, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of companies could probably ask the factories for that data anyway because the government is getting much more stringent on that there.
Right.
And then what was really key, I thought, was we asked about use of recycled materials. So how many people are tracking or looking at or trying to recycle materials and reuse them, and 44%. So if you're looking at where a large majority of people are tracking and using and focusing, it's recycled materials.
Right.
And I think it might be the lowest hanging fruit if you're looking at sustainability.
And the most marketable.
Probably the most marketable on the back end. We see Keds has done this.
Yeah.
We've seen numerous other brands
Adidas.
take some waste and try to
Rothy's.
do a lot of recycling of the materials they have in the process. And that could be from their own waste, meaning after you process the shoes and you have extra materials there, that you somehow create a special run or something like that, or is collecting materials from the environment, bottle caps, waste in water in the oceans, et cetera, and then trying to use that material in the product itself to create something new. So
Right.
I think based on the results that we see here, it looks like if you have nothing and you're not really focused on anything, start asking factories just for data if they have it. Getting reports on that and talking to them about that, I think will just raise awareness of we need to do a little bit better on this. Maybe not creating enforcement or targets yet, but I think you first need to understand where the factories are and where your carbon footprint is and where your waste footprint is and things like that.
Right.
But definitely on recycled materials. And I think it's honestly materials, the wasted materials you have are physical, right? So some of the stuff is like it's out of sight, out of mind, whether it's water waste or emissions or things like that. You can track it, but it may not be directly it may not be at the front of someone's brain, but you see a material and it's like, am I going to throw this away or recycle it? There's a choice there. Right. It's tangible. Exactly. So I think that's why the number's so high on that. We also asked who's responsible for sustainability.
And this, again, was asked of the industry.
Right. And of the industry, 82% said the brands or the company was responsible ultimately for sustainability. And then 18% said actually our suppliers and factories should be responsible for sustainability. So overwhelmingly brand focused. We also looked at the cultural aspects of sustainability. So it wasn't just, we're talking about sustainability. It's like, okay, who are the true believers of this and actually digging into this, right? So we asked sustainability is in our values or mission statement, which is intense. If you have it in there, it's like especially you're publicly traded, the board's going to come back and say, you have this in there. How did you execute against that? Right.
Exactly.
26% said that they had some form of sustainability or environmental friendliness in their mission statement or value statement. And that could be company-wide or that could be departmental, either one. And then we also asked sustainability is a top priority in our department. And 23% said that was the case. So you've got that.
Right.
And then we dug in again and we said, okay, let's look at the infrastructure. Meaning let's see what actually operationally exists. Are they putting resources towards this? Are they setting up teams for this? Like not just talk, but like actually what are they setting up infrastructure wise?
Right.
And we asked a question. It says, we have a dedicated person or team for tracking or implementing sustainable material development or production. And 40% said that they had a person or a team that was designated. So that's a great step for industry that someone actually is tasked with thinking about that and focusing on that. And then we asked, we have clear sustainability targets and goals. So it's actually like we're starting to set up our programs. We're starting to think about how we want to move forward and become better at this and become more sustainable. So 34% actually have targets and goals that they're looking to improve upon and get better upon. So again, if you look at the numbers, when you do a poll and statistics and things like this, you want to make sure that you don't have outliers. And I don't think any of these places we have really outliers. Seems very consistent, which means our survey is quite accurate, I think. And to be honest, it's the only time anyone's really done a benchmark. This is a benchmark poll of our industry to see where we're at. We'll probably do one once a year and a judge back to see where we're at and see how we're progressing. But those are some key takeaways. And then the last two kind of takeaways from our survey that is on shoesustainability.com. We asked them what's pulling at the industry. What are some constraints to becoming more sustainable? And we gave them options, a number of options. And here were the top ones. 74% said cost of implementing some kind of sustainability program or person or something like that. Right. 47% said it's not a priority for our leadership.
Right.
Meaning ultimately, if I'm judged my bonus and my salary is judged, I have to get the product done and to the consumer and it's got to sell.
Right.
And if sustainability is in there, great. If not, then leadership, it's not really a priority for how they're judging me and my department, which is, I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah. And that's something you can change that. The cost is the difficult one to try and change.
And then the last major constraint, 62% said they lack the knowledge or ability to execute some kind of sustainability program, meaning they're still learning.
Right.
They're still figuring out how they set it up. Cost is probably in that as well, I think.
Yeah.
But I also go back to cost because I think as you start, you have to start somewhere and you don't have to dive in head first. But I think part of it is we had Beth Goldstein from NPD Group talking about the consumer data.
Yeah.
And there's a specific market for this in terms of demand. Like obviously all your products, you want them to become sustainable.
Right.
But in terms of like focusing your efforts, if you're talking about cost, you have to have ROI on this. So 18 to 34 category is obviously the ones willing to pay a little bit more and you could put a little bit more into it. So being thoughtful about your cost in terms of product and focus in the market. But also I think it doesn't cost you anything to ask your factory if they're tracking any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Just going in and saying, are you keeping metrics? Are you reporting anything? How could we work together to create something? We're not asking for a target or a goal yet. We just want to know, as we work with you guys, Are you thinking about it? Are we tracking it? How can we get a little bit better? And then the recycled material thing, I think, goes back to that. It's like, what are we doing with this? How could we reutilize it in some way, and working with the factory or material supplier to do that. So I think cost is an issue, but I think there's little small things that you can start doing. And the other thing too is assigning someone. We have, 40% said a dedicated person for tracking or implementing or thinking about it. I think we could easily assign someone at our brands and companies and just say, you're the dedicated person. You're the lead.
Right.
Just talk about this, think about this, create ideas, as we move forward, and kind of designate somebody on that. And then the last kind of key takeaway, and we kind of put this kind of, the bottom line is, or to be blunt about this, 2/3 of the industry thinks sustainability is a priority, yet cost, speed, and quality are still more important.
Absolutely.
Which is
understandable.
Yeah, totally.
Totally understandable.
Totally. So I think sustainability will grow in importance over time as we figure out how we address those constraints.
Yeah.
Knowledge, cost. I think the leadership priority of that will adjust over time too, because they'll see the ROIs from the other points. So
yeah, and finding a true definition that people can come around. So
once you make it simpler, people will be more on board.
Right.
Defining that in easier ways to create solutions.
Yeah, and I literally think people don't even think to ask their factories, are you tracking emissions? Are you doing this? Not enforcement or fear or anything like that.
Right.
But just get your metrics. Just start looking at some data points.
And that's what we're aiming to do through the shoe waste program. We are launching in August a shoe waste program that is going to be a pilot program that brings 30 factories in China, specifically in 3 different provinces, into alignment and tracking shoe waste at the factory level. And so our plan is, in partnership with Elevate, is to reduce manufacturing waste to landfill or incineration for the industry. So that's kind of what our goal is and what we're aiming to do. Knowing that a couple things. One, these trend lines will continue to move upwards as Andy has talked about them. And secondly, the Chinese government itself is implementing new waste regulations in 2020. And we want our factories to be compliant with those new regulations. And so we'll be developing a baseline. The main goal is really to develop a baseline, as Andy talked about, is to achieve kind of that baseline, understand what's currently being done, what the factories are measuring. Are they implementing a resource efficiency program that's focused on waste? What kind of tools and resources and consulting do we need to provide as an industry to our factory base to help them accomplish this goal? Ultimately, the goal is to reduce the manufacturing waste to incineration of landfill by 25% within these suppliers in the program in 2019 and 2020. And we'll do that through in-factory consulting in local language. We'll do it through ongoing kind of hand-holding to help the factories understand how to manage their waste. And then also connect the factories to recyclers. Like, there's a whole different industry of recyclers in China that purchases waste and recycles it and sells it. And so how are we making those connections so that it's, at the end of the day, our hope is that this pilot program will show that there is a return on investment, and it's more profitable actually to recycle your waste, either because you're saving on material, so you're learning how to better process and create footwear components, and you're saving on material, or you're selling the waste and you're earning money in that regard. And so that's what we plan to do. It launches in August, and we will keep our members up to speed as to what we're finding through the next year and a half to 2 years, and with the hopes of expanding it beyond the 30 factories that we have and expanding it beyond China, because we think for all the talk of using recycled materials, for all the talk of Parlay and Rothy's and all the cool stuff those brands are doing, you may not be able to market this as much, but this is really pragmatic, and this is where the rubber hits the road when it comes to production and the use of materials and sustainability, is using less materials and recycling waste. And I think that's so key.
Well, I think it's first of all, it's great that you took the lead on that, and it's great that we had a committee of companies, footwear companies, that worked together on this to figure out what they wanted to do. There's nothing being forced on the factories. These factories have said they're willing to do it and try it out to see what it is. So it is a great case study. And I think as we go along And as laws change in China and other places on recyclability and waste and things like that, I think there'll be businesses set up around that, because there'll be opportunities for third parties to make money supporting factories doing that. And so I think it'll be easier over time as we go through this, but I think it's a great step to find that, identify it, and kind of get best practices and spread that out. And then all of a sudden it can become a de facto program on sustainability that people can tell and feel good about and actually implement and work with factories hand in hand on this. So it solves some of that, the constraints that we saw in terms of knowledge issue and cost issue at the same time. Because if we can all work together on these programs like this, and hopefully there's more that we can do, then we kind of all share the cost at the front, and then we figure out best practices, implementation, and then operationally it lowers all our costs and increases the effectiveness of the program. Yeah. And in the same way, again, there's a section on shoesustainability.com that focuses on FDRA and industry-wide programs that you can get involved with and learn more about. And you can contact us too if you would like to have a discussion or ask any questions on that. And the other program we've been working on for several years now is the material exchange. We've talked about it endlessly on this podcast and in other events. But I'm really excited about that because in terms of sustainability, you're talking about eliminating millions of sample books that transit the globe. So you're talking about wasted material that goes into a book that then goes onto a shelf, the shipping for that book, sometimes by FedEx. So you're talking about emissions in that. But you're also talking about the ability to use this platform to communicate with suppliers in ways that can prevent your development team from having to go to China at least once a year. So if they're going 4 or 5 times already to go work with suppliers or the factory, this program will become a digital tool by which it will eliminate at least one of those trips. We've heard that from several brands, meaning, not just in terms of cost, but also emissions. It also, in the long run, will help material suppliers stop making materials that don't sell.
Right.
So every single year we have tons and tons and tons upon tons of materials that rot, are wasted, are burned, or are whatever, just disposed of in landfills because the supplier made a risk assessment thinking it could sell. It wasn't on trend, and then therefore they have nothing, they can't use it or do it. And so material exchange allows the supplier to look at what brands are looking at and saying, this is on trend, this is on focus. So if they make a textile of silk and a leather, and no one's clicking on their silk, there's no reason to make it. And so hopefully over time they learn that and incorporate it. So there's much more to this. We'll talk about it at some of our upcoming events that we have and training sessions on sustainability. But there's just so many good things that can come out of this digitization of filtering, searching, and looking for materials, communicating, getting a digital representation up front before you ever start sampling on certain things. It just trims out some of the waste that we have. So excited about that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And on the website, if you go there, you'll see the NPD group data on the consumers. You can see, you can click through that and it'll take you directly to their website where they talk about the consumer trends related to sustainability. Of course, we had Beth talk about that. So you can find that. You can find our data, the programs. We also have... we talk to a lot of different interesting people across the industry, a lot of different experts, people at brands. We do video interviews. We do these podcasts. We find really interesting articles. And so this shoesustainability.com is also kind of this resource center where we're posting up our conversations on different things. And we really hope it's kind of a place where we're very thoughtful and helping drive conversation and an honest conversation about what's coming up, what's happening, roadblocks. I think we can learn a lot from not just who's doing what, but what the big challenges are. So people don't feel so alone or frustrated that they haven't started or done anything or don't know where to start. Another thing we put on the website is kind of nonprofit groups that focus on responsible sourcing issues, sustainability issues. So Leather Working Group, Sustainable Apparel Coalition, Better Cotton Initiative, Responsible Wool Standards. Always mess this up, but Okio Tex, is that how you say it?
Sounds right.
Yeah, on textiles. the FSC on forest issues, Blue Sign, and Textile Exchange. So it's folks who are working on making sure that the materials are sustainable and they're certified before they get to the factory, or at the factory they're certified that the compliance standards are being met in those ways. And kind of last on the site that we put in here, we talked internally about creating some kind of standard or guidebook for doing this, and we felt like we didn't want to constrain the environment, meaning somebody's going to come up with a really interesting way of working on sustainability that no one's thinking about.
Right.
And if we put out a guidebook that would kind of set a standard in some ways, it would prevent creativity. And we think everybody comes at sustainability a little bit differently on what they can do and how they want to do it. And we didn't want to pigeonhole anyone. So basically what we did was we created a resource section for measuring and reporting sustainability based on international standards. So we took some toolkits and we took some reports on how to measure emissions and wastewater. So if you have no idea, your factory isn't already doing it, you can go here and use these basic standards to do basic measurements and just get data points and see where you're at. So there's a lot on here.
Chock full of sustainability goodness.
That's right. Fully sustainable. We're not printing anything out. It'll all be digital. But I'm excited about this website. It will be, obviously we're going to keep updating it with data and tools and resources as available. But this is something that I think our industry really needed to try to get people moving forward thoughtfully on this. And I hope people use it as a often as a resource tool if they have questions.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. And I think it's kind of the capstone, the capstone to Sustainability Month for 2019, but also the start of trying to herd the footwear sustainability cats, if you will, to bring them all together and try to continue to talk about this, because those numbers in the survey you outlined are just going to go up and up and up. And I think, particularly as baby boomers die off and Gen Z comes of age, it's all going to be so important for our members to be plugged in and understanding what's out there and how to. I mean, that's why we were talking to brands like Keds who aren't changing the world, but are finding unique ways of getting their foot into the sustainability space and trying to build. It's a mustard seed, trying to build out from that rather than like let's just change the whole dynamic, or let's launch our entirely new brand, totally sustainable. Yeah, these heritage brands are not going to be able to do that, so they're going to have to kind of find their way into it.
I think just baby steps, honestly, into this is super important. Yeah. You don't want to jump in and spend a lot of money trying to set something up that won't be successful. And that's why I just go back to just start with basic metrics.
Yep.
Let's look at where we're at. Let's go attend FDRA events and hear what Allbirds is doing and other people are doing.
Yep.
Let's hear what the best practices are. Let's think critically. Let's get a designated person in our company to be the person who always brings up sustainability, questions what we're doing, looks at it a little bit differently. So can we do this just a tad bit differently? Measures the cost, but is thoughtful about it. I think those things to start moving forward a little bit by little bit will help. And again, I do think there's going to be third parties built up around. I mean, you've already got organizations, that are doing this, but I mean, full on, somebody's going to come in and be like, there's some companies that do it. Like SGS has a sustainability person that's super good.
Yeah. Xavier.
Yeah. But people who can come in and say, okay, like here's what people are doing. Here's what you could do. Let me go to your factories. Let me look at your development teams. And they'll put together programs and then help them implement it. And I think that's going to be more and more a big part. So even if you're not doing anything, there's going to be an opportunity in the future, I think, to find people that will do it for you.
The other thing is, because there's been a whole industry built up around actual operational sustainability. We've talked about is product.
Right.
We haven't talked about the headquarters building in the U.S., LEED certified.
Right.
Recyclability for your employees, sustainability stuff for your water management in your headquarters. That's a whole different discussion, and one that's cross industries. And so I think even the studio we tape in, you walk in, they've got a thing on what the carbon footprint is for this building.
Right.
I don't know what it even means, but I think there's two sides to the sustainability.
I think it's a great point, because the more visible you're putting that stuff up, the more it seeps into our minds to think about turning off the light or
Right.
using less waste, or in our jobs thinking about sustainability practices and how people do that stuff.
Right.
So I think anytime you can cognitively be like, oh, like, this is this, or designate like we designated an industry-wide sustainability month. You could designate a week or a month and merely put out some articles and, how the company thinks about this.
Yeah.
People could get involved.
Like you said, like having it outside of the building makes you think about that. Or even like when you have those little signs like next to the sink, like as you're washing your hand, it's just like while you're doing those things, like it's branding it in a way.
Fashionable.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing too is we had a podcast previously with Nico, who's with the Footwearist, where we talked about it recyclability, but also we talk a lot with her about this shoe design process has to change and implement sustainability during that process, because we have so many products that can't be recycled,
Right.
because we don't have the infrastructure to break apart the shoes. And there's some programs happening on that, but there's no one that can like in mass strip out shoes and take the midsole out, the outsole, the upper, and then
Right.
and then know what to do with it and where to take it,
Right.
and there's just nothing, there's no robust
Deconstruction,
mechanism.
yeah.
Right. So you have to think about that. You have to, design with materials in mind that are sustainable or biodegradable or whatever it is. So, it starts at the beginning and goes all the way through the process, not just that. I mean, and maybe that's something we can ask. Maybe we'll do a designer sustainability survey and say for your designers and see what we
That'd
can
be
get
great.
from their viewpoint, and do different segments and say, okay, we got kind of the operational stuff, the
Yeah.
sourcing guys, material guys. What about the designer? And what about the marketing guys too? Because the marketing team, I think, is, and I don't mean to pick on the marketing people, but I think sometimes they promote sustainability in ways that aren't necessarily that sustainable.
True.
So they tell a story and it's great, but it doesn't necessarily mesh with what sustainability
You saying
is.
marketing guys are spinning, Andy?
Oh, yes, I did.
And we're in the capital of
Oh,
spin.
no, you didn't. Oh, yes, I did. Oh, no, you didn't. Oh, yes, I did. It's been done.
Who is that?
That's my internal voice.
That was my grandmother's voice and my mom's voice.
Is he going to eat a donut? No, he's not going to eat a donut. He's on a diet. Eat a donut. I love donuts. I might have a donut too, but you're on a diet. Eat one anyway.
Does that mean you're having two?
Well, for
that
all the
scenario?
four voices in my head, yes.
One for each?
One for each voice. 4.
You can get the munchkin ones.
Well, if I'm eating a Dunkin', I'm probably getting 2. But if I eat a Krispy Kreme, I'm getting the whole dozen.
I ate a whole dozen once when I worked and driving around in a job out of college, and I felt so sick.
And you probably had sweet tea with it too, didn't you?
I'm sure I did. I was in North Carolina. I think it's inevitable. You can't avoid it. It's like air.
Or Cheerwine.
They like shoot into your mouth as you walk by the Bojangles. So
Exactly.
yeah,
If you ask for tea in the Carolinas, make sure you specify unsweet.
and they go in
If
the
you don't
back
sweet.
and they dust off some old vat.
Unsweet. We're out of that.
Gonna kick you out.
The sugar comes with the tea itself. Is that
It's in the
true?
plant.
I don't know, but that seems like a lot of work. I just ate a dozen Krispy Kremes. I can't come around the side. Sorry. At least you're being sustainable. The laugh track's the best thing we've done.
It
on this
is the
show.
best thing. It took us 200 episodes to find it. Oh man!
All right. Good conversation. Please visit shoesustainability.com. We put a lot of effort in this. Give us feedback if we're missing something. I would love to know. I would love to add stuff. If you want to be interviewed or taped on our podcast or on video, where I do a video interview, or Matt does a video, or Jasmine does a video interview with you on this stuff, please let us know, because ultimately I think there's no real trade secrets to sustainability in terms of factory issues or anything like that. I think, product could be a little bit different because, of course you put a lot of money into that. But just anything that we can help make our industry more sustainable and better and environmentally friendly, I think is a good step. And I do want to, as we built this stuff, I did have a really good partner in thinking about sustainability. I have to give credit to my wife. My wife worked at Conservation International for many years. And they have a partnership with Starbucks. Their partnership, on teaching their farmers to be sustainable with coffee. They have a partnership with United, which is for if you wanted to carbon offset, you could give to Conservation International. And they plant trees. And my wife worked on global environmental funds for
Kelly
wastewater.
Polk, Andy's better half.
So I talked to her a lot about this because it is it's some of this is new to me as well, right?
Yeah.
I want to recycle and I want to think about the environment, but I really don't know technically all this stuff. And it was really important for me to talk to her and have a reality check as to this is what it is, and this is how you actually implement some of this stuff. It's not pie in the sky stuff. It's it's not easy, but it can be very meaningful too. So drop that in. All right. And Jasmine, you are now up for a fashion, footwear, and focus segment. You better come up with something quick. She was just sitting here laughing with the laugh track, and she thought she wouldn't have to do anything this episode.
Okay, well, something that I have seen that I'll be first. Okay, so last year, right? Chanel came out with it. This is not a shoe, but it's shoe related. It's like an ankle purse. So it's a mini bag that you probably could only fit maybe like change in, or like maybe like a USB drive, something like that. But that's about it. But they only came in like a woman's Chanel bag. So I feel like someone like a Kanye West would come out with like a sporty men's version of the ankle purse. Now, it's summertime, you have a pair of shorts on. Will you be wearing an ankle purse that kind of clips around your ankle and you can fit something very, very small? Yeah, but it seems to be fashionable. They still, the Chanel item was priced at like maybe $1,300. It's about this big.
What? Just buy a pair of roos. Kangaroos.
Oh, kangaroos?
There were back in the day. You had a change pocket on the side, and you put your change in it.
Okay.
Payless sold kangaroos for a while.
Or penny loafers.
Or
your contraband.
But
your pocket.
What are they called? Ankle purses?
Yes, an ankle purse, yes.
I'll do that with my fanny pack and a visor and a wife beater, and I'm ready to go be a tourist in Europe.
Well, I mean, as long as it's Chanel, you'll be fashionable.
Or Florida. Let's be honest.
And as long as you have $3,000, you'll be able to do that. Well, yeah, that's a trend that I feel like it's going to resurface in a different way.
We're going to squash it. Squash it right now. I need to see a
mark my
picture.
words when it comes out.
I have one that's not on product, but it's on retail side.
Okay.
So I recently was put on by my wife, but Nordstrom has a new section of their website called it's a sustainable style section.
Oh, okay.
And so what they have done is they created a filter. So you can search men, women's, whatever, but you can also search by sustainability. So you can click on this thing, and they have built out a whole section. And I put this up on LinkedIn, so people who follow me probably saw this, but if you didn't, you can go find it on there. But in essence, I think it's kind of the new wave of how retailers are going to start looking at this by putting a section up. So I think it's super important, and I think other people should mimic it. And here's why I think it works. They actually have a page that defines what they consider sustainability as, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's either recycled materials, or it meets this standard or that standard, or one of these things. There's a whole page on how they list it out. And if it meets that criteria, they can tag it under that. And you can just go on and search by their sustainable style category for, sunglasses or hats or bags or boots or whatever it is. So I think it's really neat to talk to that segment that wants to search that stuff.
Yeah.
And see a whole catalog that's there built out of that.
And that's good consumer data too, to have that filter on there. That's easier for brands to get that and to, kind of make business decisions based off of that. Is there a seal for something that's sustainable? No?
No, if you go to shoesustainability.com, there's a list of organizations that do certifications.
Okay.
So if you're a factory or you're a material supplier or something like that, you can get certified as being sustainable or following some kind of compliance or some kind of standard that they have. And there's a ton of organizations that do this. I think it's more limited for footwear because we have, it's a set.
Niche.
Yeah, exactly. But for like apparel, there's like hemp, there's a organic cotton standard, recycled cashmere, recycled nylon, recycled polyester.
I think the seal would help in just like the branding of sustainability in general.
Totally. And to that point, material exchange, what they're building in is they're starting to work with those organizations. So if there's a material that is certified, it will have a tag on it, so you can already see it up front.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And you could choose that material over another one that might be certified.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I'm just thinking like a brick and mortar store versus like being on e-commerce and being able to filter it out. If you're in a store, you'll be able to
I think eventually it will have it on there, because if you're in a store physically, you might use like augmented reality in the future.
Very true.
And it can tag it, right? So you can see
And
all the
give you
attributes.
details on it.
Totally. And online it'd be super easy to be like, if they're already like, if you look at Nordstrom, they're already tracking like blue sign.
Right.
So it could be certified and a little seal on there
Yeah.
on the product itself, which might add something extra to it. So yeah, there's a lot to be done on this, but I think Nordstrom, for what they've done, is really good because they listed it.
Yeah, and
they didn't
they're
just say
ahead of
these
the
are,
curve
we
a
think these
little
are
bit.
sustainable. They're like this. Now I asked them to come on the show, and they said at this time they didn't want to because they knew we were probably
sister-in-law?
hardball. No. I asked corporate, and corporate's like no. So maybe one day they'll come on and talk to us about this. About how they set this up and why they did it, but I think it's a good model for people to look at and mimic. Anyone can do this, but I think the standards of what you consider it as, it has to be there, right? You can't just say it's sustainable. It's sustainable. Is it? Yes. Is it? No. Okay, folks, this is Shoe and Show, covering the ins and outs of everything footwear. Thank you so much for joining our show today, where we talked about sustainability. Please visit shoesustainability.com. I don't know if I've said it enough times, but visit there. Tell us what you think. Hopefully you get something out of it. Definitely look at all the data stuff. It's super interesting. And until next time, Shoe-In is out.
Shoe-In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.